Welcome back to the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. Thanks for making us part of your Saturday morning. Sunday morning.
Sunday.
I got to get used to it. But I'm going to go to Aaron right now. Let's get Aaron on the line. Hey, Aaron, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We've been debating. Well, I'm doing great, thanks. But we've had these long conversations here this morning, and you're going to know this better than all of us. But all these rumors about our guy Jim Harbaugh to the NFL. I need more steam on that.
Not other than what's come out the last couple of days. I don't think really anyone knows other than Jim and maybe his wife. It's one of those things where I think we're going to find out the minute Jim decides.
Yeah, and Aaron, especially after it's almost like you have the season that he had this year in Michigan. His name is now back there on the coaching carousel in the NFL. I think it's always going to be there, but you win the Big Ten, you beat Ohio State. He bet on himself this year, revamped the entire coaching staff. I think it's a real possibility.
Oh yeah, I think more so maybe this year than previous years too. I think you can make the case, and you just kind of laid it out. But his stock as a head coach has probably never really been higher since he's been at Michigan, other than maybe his first year. I mean, he showed that he could, get the program out of, the 2-win season they got last year. He revamped the coaching staff. They did some things differently on both sides of the ball this year schematically, and he showed that he can win. But yeah, the question remains: does he want to keep going and try to get Michigan to the ultimate top in the national championship, or does he want to try, something new and something familiar that he'd go back to the NFL and try to win there too? And you got to remember, I mean, being an NFL head coach is, dare I say, a little easier than being a college coach nowadays. Sure. And you've got to deal with the recruiting 24/7 essentially, and now NIL and the transfer portal and everything else. So. And
Aaron, the job, and I've talked about this on my podcast too, but the job that I think Coach Harbaugh did at basically bringing in an entire new coaching staff, and obviously the Mike McDonald hire was fantastic, but I think Josh Gaddis too. Many people thought last year and after the last couple of years that it was time to move on from him. And, his schemes this year were so much different than what they've been in the past. Talk to us just how special, those two guys are to Michigan and the overall coaching staff. Yeah, I mean, Gaddis kind of, they went back to Jim's kind of bread and butter, run the football, smash mouth football, and that's not necessarily what Josh Gaddis, I think, wanted to do when he first came to Michigan. Remember when he first came in, it was all about, the talk was all speed and space and throwing the ball around, getting the football in as many hands as possible. And yes, they did that this past year, but it was obviously rooted in the ground game. I think there was a realization coming into 2021 that Michigan didn't run the football enough, and they had an experienced, healthy, good offensive line, and they had some running backs that were really high on. So I think the beginning of the year was really a test to see how good the running game could do. And as we saw those first 3 or 4 games at non-conference schedule, they kept running the football to great success. And I think they realized that and kept it going. Now the flip side of that, or the other part of that, is the quarterback situation. They decided early in the spring that they were going to lean on Cade McNamara as a starter. And I think he had some limitations. And I think that went into the decision too. But Gaddis, I think, very much reverted back to how Jim Harbaugh wanted to win. And they realized early on they could do it that way. And that's why you saw such a distinct, difference in what Michigan has been trying to do the past couple of years. And, Aaron, stay on the quarterback situation because, we saw the 2-quarterback system. And I got to tell you, as a high school football coach, I've never been a fan of the 2-quarterback system. But I get it. Cade didn't have a bad year. 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, completed over 60% of his balls. But I think as a fan and people watching from the outside know that this is JJ's team, you would think going forward. Is there a chance we could see that switch going into the season? Do you think it'll be McCarthy's job? That's probably the number one question of the offseason. Cade has showed that he can win football games, and I think that's one of the big reasons why Michigan's coaching staff stuck with him as long as they did. As I mentioned, he is limited. He had trouble at times completing the deep ball. He isn't that great playmaker with that great mobility that JJ has. So they're very, in a way, they're 2 different quarterbacks. I really don't know what Michigan's coaching staff is going to do in the offseason. I think obviously there's an assumption that JJ is going to be the guy eventually, and I'm sure he will be. But whether they decide to flip the switch completely and give the starting job to JJ or continue with the platoon idea remains to be seen.
Now, keep in mind, you mentioned the two quarterback system. How some folks aren't a fan of it, and I get it. But even before this year, you look at Jim's past couple of years at Michigan. Yes, he had a starter, whether it was Shea Patterson or Wilton Spade or whatever, but he wasn't afraid of using it as a quarterback. Remember, Dylan McCaffrey came in quite a bit a couple of years ago. So he's had the last couple of years he's kind of flirted with this idea, and I think now he sees, especially this year, he thought he had two capable quarterbacks. I think he thought it was a good way to wean kind of J.J. McCarthy into the college game. So it wouldn't shock me if they go the platoon route next year. Now, whether those quarterbacks like that or prefer that, I don't know. But I do think, as a whole, Michigan's coaching staff thinks that they have two legitimate, real playmakers and solid, starters at the quarterback position.
And how nice was it to see the season that Aiden Hutchinson had coming back, and seeing him at the Heisman Trophy presentation, and of course the story with David Ojabo. How special was it to see the season that both those guys had?
Yeah, I mean, they were the key. I think the key to everything. Yeah, I think there were a lot of reservations about their defense going into the year. I had them myself. I didn't know how quickly the unit as a whole was going to click with new coordinator and new scheme, and they're playing Aiden a little bit differently. But I think they exceeded expectations. I think there were some reservations about how Aiden would come out of his fractured ankle he suffered last year, if he was going to be the same type of player with the same type of speed, and he looked even better. So I think kudos to both of those guys. They're a big reason why Michigan was so successful on that side of the ball. Aiden had a really good year, obviously, but yeah, you mentioned David Ojabo, who I think took his game to another level, and in a way kind of benefited Aiden, because while teams were obviously honing in and preparing and double teaming Aiden, they couldn't necessarily take their eye off Ojabo too. And I think that helped both guys, and they were certainly the engine to, I think, Michigan's success on that side of the ball.
We were talking prior on the show, and I said it'd be so nice that if the Big Ten East if the Big Ten in general would just restructure the Big Ten East and the West, whether it's Penn State, Michigan, whoever you move, but that Big Ten East is just a gauntlet compared to that Big Ten West.
Yeah, or even do away with the divisions and just take the top two teams at the end of the year, and play them in the championship. I think you get certainly more favorable matchups, and you'd probably, at the end of the day, get the two best teams, in the Big Ten. Unfortunately, that's not how they're doing things at the moment. There's always discussion, I think, about potentially doing away with the divisions, or at least restructuring them, like you said. I don't know how soon that could happen, but I think the Big Ten has shown that they're in the past that they're willing to adapt and do things for change. We saw the renaming of the divisions, so it's now the question. But at least in the immediate time or immediate short frame or time frame, I think you're going to continue to see, the East dominate the West, and the winner ultimately get in the playoffs.
So, Aaron, I'll put you on a spot for Monday night. Who do you like in the national championship game?
Yeah, it's a good question. I lean Alabama. Just based on what we saw in the SEC championship game, I thought they were obviously the better team, and I think they opened some folks' eyes to the Georgia defense and how they are vulnerable. But you got to remember, Alabama's missing one of their top receivers. It is difficult to beat a good team 2 times in a row. So I think you're certainly going to see a more competitive game Monday night. I lean Alabama, but it would not surprise me